Hey, what's up? This is Dilio, and you're watching the Dilio T2K YouTube channel. If you don't know who I am, I'm Dilio. I'm an independent artist and music producer and also content creator. And in this video, I wanted to give a message to my friends and followers about sounds and gear. Now, I'm not talking about St. Joe and sounds and gear. That's a whole different thing, a whole different brand. But I just want to take a moment to speak about sound, gear, and I want to encourage those who are watching me and follow my channel. There's a lot of people that watch, and because of that, I want to give energy, motivation, encouragement to them. So we're going to go into it like this. So as an MPC user, and if you're an MPC user, you saw the conversations that was had about sound and things of that nature, about one device sounding different from the other. And the truth is that devices do sound different. Do I believe they are better or worse? Sometimes. But what I learned being a sound engineer, being live, is that sound is very subjective. The sound world is a funny place to be in, especially as an engineer, because you could do everything right, but if someone doesn't like you, then now there's something wrong with the sound. Because sound itself is a very subjective thing. How we perceive our gear and how we perceive our instruments is a very subjective thing. And I think because it's a very subjective thing, that it's important to solidify what is your perspective on it. Because ultimately, what your perspective is on it is absolutely the truth. And sometimes when you're developing and growing in your journey, if you hear a certain type of thing said about your gear or equipment, then you may look at it sideways. I know for me, coming up early, there's always kind of like this pride thing. And I've mentioned this in videos before where, oh, I want my FL Studio to sound this way. I can go even further than that, talking about Pro Tools and how you felt when you finally got the Waves plugins. I remember having Pro Tools, and your Pro Tools rig wasn't complete until you got the Waves plugins on there, right? And at that time, the Waves plugins were everything. Now, so many years later, we could Waves like, I mean, I can be honest with you and say that I only use 2 or 3 Waves plugins, like the L2, the RVox. Those are all the plugins I really use from Waves, because there's so many Waves plugins, you just don't need them all. Now, coming up when you start, you like, man, I want to have everything, and it's cool to say that because you want to be able to say to somebody else, yeah, I got the Waves plugin, I got the whole suite. When the reality is you're only using 1, 2, or 3 plugins. But that's the culture. That's the thing. And so when I think about it, there is a difference. There is a difference. And that's great, because now you got more than one flavor if you're able to acquire both. There's a different experience when you're dealing with a Model D analog synthesizer and a Model D plugin. Now, software is very good at recreating sounds and synthesizing them using algorithms. Very good, very accurate. Sometimes in a blind test, you can't even tell which is which. But because sometimes it's not an exact equation or science, you can believe something sounds better by how you feel about it. In this case, the Model D plugin that I got from Behringer, right? I love how it sounds. But then there's a ton of plugins that have been doing the Model D for years. You have Arteria's version of the Model D. You have, I think FL Studio has a version of it that has that 3 oscillator thing. You know, there's there's the Monarch from Native Instruments. There are a ton of different Model D plugins that all sound different. They are based off of actual synthesizer, the Mini Moog. However, I like how the analog one sounds better than all of them, because not only does it sound better, and yes, I could probably use plugins and tweak it and make it sound good in the box. But what I don't get from the experience of turning those knobs with a mouse, I get to physically reach over and touch that. That's an experience. That's a fun experience. It gives you the feeling of being in control, because as we move forward into working in the box, we do trade. There is a loss. Whereas if you had everything hardware in front of you, you got knobs in front of you, you can touch the gear. That's fun, but it's not as a convenient thing as when you have a plugin inside the box. Because when you want to render out a full-length song, you have to track out the whole sound from the synthesizer, the hardware, because in today's society, the majority of us are recording into a DAW, which means that we have to track it out. I got this DeepMind here, JD08. Those aren't plugins, and it's funny because the JD08 is a plugin now from Roland, but I wanted the hardware because I like that keyboard. And you still have to track it out. You still have to put that all together and get it on a DAW, whereas if you got a plugin, you just click render and boom, because everything's there. So there is a trade-off with these, but they're all just tools to help you create what you want to create. So I do enjoy both worlds. I do enjoy the benefit of having an analog synthesizer at my side and also having plugins. And there was a time where I didn't have that. I know comments are made by what's behind me, and I have to laugh and chuckle because a lot of those people, and maybe some have, but a lot of those people didn't see the apartment with a Sam's Club table and a CRT monitor and a condenser microphone that I could barely afford. Actually, a family bought me a condenser microphone. I did not have a lot of money to buy equipment. They bought me an Audio-Technica 2020, and it was a workhorse, and it was a birthday gift. And you know, I treasure that microphone. And that was a time where, honestly, I wasn't really focused on having a lot of gear. Of course, I want to have a lot of gear, but that's all I had. And I still created it. The proof is here on my YouTube channel. You can go back. People say I'm a legend on here. Okay, I'll take that. I'm an OG on this. How could I say that? Because you can go back to my videos from 2007 if I still have them up there. I didn't have this. And I'll never forget that fact. And I don't want people to see me and say, oh, yeah, I'm a super producer, man. Always. No, you're not going to get that from Dilio. Dilio has the storyline of before and now. And I choose to look at what's going to be after as something better and more mind-blowing. Because at this stage, it's no longer about the acquisition of gear. Of course, I like to make content with it, learn it, put my hands on it. But now it's about creating music. Now it's about creating projects, collaboration, creating sounds, products. And that's where I'm at now, because back then when I did not have the equipment, I wasn't making much money. I didn't know how to manage finances, and I could barely get a machine. I remember that. I could barely get a machine, let alone machine studio. I was a chauffeur. It was a hard time. I was a full-time sound engineer. It was a hard time. And so the knowledge in managing finances at that time, I did not know. And the majority of my financial education was, you do what you want with your money. Really, that was the extent of that education. And then after that, You learn the hard way, because at that time I would make more of an emotional decision to kind of spend that amount of money to get what you want, but then you don't really have anything left, so you just sort of endure till you get more money later. Now I move a little bit different than that, because now, even though I would have the resources to acquire something, if I had a family, or if I had others around me with a responsibility that I had to be accountable for, I wouldn't move that way. So if you're by yourself, you can kind of rough it a little bit. But I do know that should a family come along, I probably won't move that way. Got to move a little bit more tact than that. So, talking about gear and equipment, I think that it's good to create with what you have. Take inventory of it. If you don't feel like you have much, honestly, I think if you just take some time and look at it, you say, oh wow, we all got great stuff, believe it or not. I think we all have great pieces of equipment. I think we all have more than we need at this point. And I think it just takes time to see a lot of different pieces of gear to say, okay, oh, this is like this. It's like cities. You know, you go to a new state or new city or a downtown area in the state of Georgia, and you go to multiple cities, and you notice that they all kind of look the same. There's a municipal building, there's a courthouse, the streets are laid out a certain type of way. A lot of these cities are very similar. So, with that being said, there are bigger things going on than our gear and our sound. And I just want to encourage you to enjoy the sound that you make with whatever you have and the gear you make. Not that you make, but the gear that you use, so that you can enjoy the process. And on top of that, link with the people who appreciate your sound. And don't marginalize yourself on what you don't have. Don't marginalize yourself on things that are not really in your control. It's a tough game. It's a tough business. A lot of it's based on perception. And a lot of it's based on who likes you and who doesn't. But if I could close out with this, is that while there might be an opportunity that isn't for you, or a door closes, or an individual that you really want to link with that doesn't really feel what you're doing, don't fret, because all that is a sign to move on from that person. Keep doing what you're doing, keep networking, and find someone else. Eventually, and there's a virtually unlimited number of people that you can meet and share what you do with, to connect with the right one that can change your life. All right, so I'm done talking on that. I hope y'all have a great day. We're on YouTube, and I'm gone.